So we're going to get started. So hi, everybody. My name is Danielle Nicole, and I am the founder of Tiny Hearts Remember Inc., nonprofit organization. Our mission is to decrease the negative impact of pregnancy and infant loss through support programs, education, advocacy. So one of my favorite programs that we have and that we offer to the community is our Tiny Hearts Share program, where we allow pregnancy and infant loss survivors to come on our platform and share their story. So today we have special guest Cara. She is an infertility coach. So today we are going to learn a little bit more about her story and what exactly an infertility coach is. So welcome, Cara.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here and share my story.
Perfect. Thank you for joining me in the middle of the day. I really appreciate it. So we're going to just jump right into it. So can you just tell us a little bit about your story and how you became an angel mama?
Yeah, so my story is kind of, I think anyone who's been through this kind of loss, their story is complicated, crazy, overwhelming, all of those things.
Yes.
My story really started with infertility. I went through a very lengthy infertility battle. I went through 14 fertility treatments, 13 of which failed. It's kind of involved, but there's sort of two different losses. Well, really three. Infertility itself is a loss, but two losses of babies, and they're different. But I kind of felt the same with both. The first one was an IVF cycle where I didn't have a lot of success with my egg retrieval. I ended up with one embryo, and they transferred it into my uterus, and after 7 days, or however many days it was, it turned out it didn't implant. At the time, I didn't really know how to feel about that because I had never been through a true miscarriage, and everybody kept saying things to me like, oh, that's not really a loss. It wasn't really a baby. It wasn't really connected to you. And I felt very dismissed and very confused about, well, maybe I shouldn't feel upset about this. I don't know. It was really tough. And at that point, that was my 7th fertility treatment. So I'd already been through so much. So cut to about 6 months later, I got unexpectedly pregnant, actually on a cycle before we were going to do IVF again. And this cycle, we had no invasive intervention or anything. And I actually got pregnant with triplets. Which was kind of like, what? After all this, I've got 3 babies. What is going on? And it was really weird. It was really complex. We got to a point in the pregnancy where we saw all 3 heartbeats. And it was, for me, I feel like I have to just sort of explain this part. For me, it felt like fate. I had always wanted, my older sister had twins 13 years before that. And I felt very connected to that. Like, oh, maybe someday I'll have twins. And then I thought, what if I had triplets? And I had myself convinced for years I was going to have triplets. So it was very emotionally, for many reasons, obviously the infertility, just wanting to be a mom so badly, forget about infertility for a second. And then I had this desire for so long, and I had these 3 babies, and I was like, oh my gosh, finally, after all this time, my dreams are coming true, amazing. And then everything kind of went a little bit, for lack of a better word, wonky, we'll say. I went for, I was having weekly ultrasounds, weekly appointments, and at my 9-week appointment, which unfortunately fell on Christmas Eve, we went in and the one baby no longer had a heartbeat. And it was kind of like I don't really know how to explain that moment, but it was stunning in a way. I can't think of a better word. I really felt stunned. I felt like there's no way this could happen. Not after everything we've been through, not after like this miracle of triplets. How could I lose one? Does that mean I'm going to lose the other two? And that, it was sort of like, okay, how do I mean, right now I'm smiling because it's been 4.5 years. So it's different looking back on it now. Definitely wasn't smiling at the time. But the weird thing for me was thinking about that failed IVF cycle and realizing I feel exactly the same way I felt when that failed, because I had that baby and it was inside my I don't know how long that it stayed in there before it died, but it was that same feeling of, that was my baby, and it lived inside of my body, and now it's gone. Yes, with the IVF, the baby didn't ever have a heartbeat, but it was still my baby. And it was suddenly kind of a realization that, oh my gosh, I've lost two babies, two very different experiences. And yeah, my situation is a little bit different because I was still pregnant after having a miscarriage, and I was still pregnant with two other babies. But ultimately, yes, that's the very abbreviated version of how I became an angel mom. Mommy, mama, lost mama. You know, there's so many beautiful terms for this complicated experience of losing a baby. And that, again, that's the abbreviated version of how that happened. My story.
Thank you so much for sharing. And of course, I am sorry to hear about your losses. And I know you stated that you tried IVF for so long. What gave you that courage to keep going? And just because I want to be able to give the angel mamas and survivors that are listening, they may kind of be in that stage where it's like, okay, I don't want to try anymore, but maybe I should try. I don't really know if I should try. Would you be able to share that part of the experience?
Absolutely. I share so much about my journey because it's so intense. It's so overwhelming, and everybody's experience is so vastly different. Even if you have the exact same situation as someone else, you're different people. So it affects you differently. And losing a child is I heard for so many years, I heard people say it's like having your heart ripped out. And it really is this baby's a part of you. And it is really hard to get back out there and say, okay, I'm going to keep trying, because you're mourning something that is so complicated and so hard to wrap your mind around. That it happened to you, whether it's the first time, the third time, the 10th time, the 20th time, it never gets easier. And it's painful. It's so incredibly painful. So yeah, it is hard to say, okay, I'm going to try again. For me, it was so weird because with the IVF loss at that time, I guess what I would say is nobody really gave me permission to grieve. I got a lot of people like telling me it wasn't a real baby because it, didn't have a heartbeat yet, or, the baby never implanted. So, all the things I was saying before, and that made it really hard for me because I felt like, okay, I just have to jump back in. And looking back on that part of it, that wasn't the right move. And I did eventually take a month off and said, this month we're going to take a break. And that really was my husband telling me, you need this for your mental health. You got to take a break. But when it came to getting back on the horse, if you will, it was about me wanting so much to have this baby. This was before I was pregnant with triplets. It was so much about, I just want to be a mom. This is something I wanted my entire life. I've got to keep trying. And it's not easy. And you have to really sit down with yourself and your partner, if you have a partner, and discuss kind of well, what are the pros and cons? I mean, that's really putting it into simple terms, but it's really taking the time to see, how do I feel? How does my partner feel? If you're going through it alone, which is very real for a lot of people, sitting down with yourself and really breaking it down. Okay, how do I feel about this? Because emotions are everything. And losing a baby at any point, there's a grieving process. And if you don't give yourself that time to grieve, you can't step forward and make the decision that's best for you. And so that was kind of the thing for me, was talking with my husband, because we were in it together, and making sure that we were open about how we both felt. And eventually I kind of just felt like it was about, I want this so much, I'm not ready to stop trying. And for some people, it is time to stop trying. And for some people, it's never time to stop trying. And for other people, there does come another point, and it's just a very subjective personal thing to make that decision. How am I going to move forward with this? And again, for me, with the IVF loss, I grieved with my husband. You know, we grieved that loss. My second loss was a lot more complicated because I was still pregnant, and I didn't get to grieve. It took me until my kids were born, my twins, who are now almost 4. It took years for me to get the opportunity to grieve my baby. And that was really complicated and unfair, because so much of the advice people kept giving me was, well, you still have 2 other babies, so you're lucky. Or, well, you're still pregnant, what are you upset about? Or why are you even grieving? You know, even like with the IVF loss, a lot of people give terrible advice and say things like, well, it was your first trimester, I was 9 weeks pregnant. And people sometimes forget that it doesn't matter how far along you are in your pregnancy, this is your child. And it's tough. I don't know if that answers the question. I know I kind of went on.
Yes, that definitely answers the question. And I like how you were able to touch base in regards to the taking a break.
Yes.
Because I do think sometimes women think, well, if I stop, then I'm giving up on myself, I'm giving up on my baby. When in reality, it may be just, you know, maybe your body just kind of need that break, and your emotions, and like you stated, your husband said, that mental health needs that break. Not saying that you're giving up, not saying anything along the lines of that, but sometimes our body just kind of needs a break from trying if it's constantly going through the loss
exactly
as well. So
yes, and that's kind of the key. I couldn't see it. I really couldn't. And then we had this great opportunity from my husband's brother to come visit him and his family across the country. And my husband, you know, it would have been scheduled during, we were going to do another IUI, and it was going to be scheduled during that time. And my husband was just like, we need this. We need this. It's not giving up on our dream. It's just it gave my body a break. It gave us time to be together, which we needed because we were so stressed. And even if you don't have that opportunity, we were lucky. We don't get opportunities like that ever. It's just so important. Like we're talking about, mental health is the #1 thing when you're dealing with a pregnancy loss. Mental health is key because it takes over your life. It takes over your emotions, and that's okay. But it's giving yourself a chance to grieve and take a break. You're not giving up on anything. You're giving your body and your mind and your spirit, everything, a chance to heal. And that is kind of, I think, the big thing, the most important thing. And as women in general, we tend to not give ourselves a chance to heal with anything. So
that's how we operate as women in general, like you stated. So how do you silence the noise of social media and maybe those friends and family members, coworkers that don't really understand what you went through, even though you do have 2 living children as well? How do you kind of silence that negativity, or do you silence it? How are you able to set those boundaries?
It's hard. I'm not gonna, sit here and say, well, it's very easy if you do this, this, and that. It's not. It's hard. The world we live in, social media is a huge part of our lives. But a couple of things that for me made it possible for me to continue on and function and live and essentially, silence all that noise. I learned the hard way not to talk about it with people who didn't understand. Some people I could, and even if they couldn't relate or understand, they would, say the right things like, I'm so sorry. Because that's really all you can say.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
Because it's when you experience a death, that's all you want is for people to tell you they're sorry for your loss and they love you and they support you. Not everyone can do that. And a lot of that is really looking at the people you're surrounding yourself with and making sure that you are aware of who they are, how do they respond to things, and knowing, okay, this is a person who's going to understand, this is a person who's not going to understand. That's sort of one piece of this very complicated puzzle. The other thing that made a huge difference for me was joining support groups, people who could understand that. And personally for me, I'm just a big fan of Facebook groups because there's little tiny communities and huge communities, and they can be very, very, very specific or a little more broad. So for example, you can have just a miscarriage community and it can be huge and broad, and that's great. And you can have a really specific miscarriage of a triplet community kind of thing.
Right,
and that's a very specific, very small group. Both are fantastic for different reasons. That has been one way that helped me a lot, because while it wasn't silencing social media, it was kind of immersing myself. It was immersing myself with the people who could understand, the people who were going through the same or a similar experience. And that helped really drown out the other noise. And the other thing is not going down the Google rabbit hole. Because one of the hardest things,
lost rabbit when you do that,
right? I mean, it's the worst thing ever, and we can't stop ourselves. And as a lost mama, you want the answers. Why did I lose my baby? What happened? Was it my fault? Was it this? Was it that? And when you go down the Google rabbit hole, you set yourself up for so much more stress, because then you get the anxiety because you see this article and this article and this garbage and that, and they all say different things, and you end up thinking, oh my gosh, it's my fault. This is what I did. And regardless of anything, the vast majority of miscarriages are not your fault. They're nobody's fault. It's nature. And so those are kind of the ways that I kind of look at it, is knowing who I'm talking to. You want the people closest to you to be able to support you. And sometimes they can, but sometimes they can't. They say the wrong thing and you internalize that. So one of the other really important parts about that is remembering, if the person says the wrong thing, most of the time they're not trying to be hurtful. They just don't know what to say. It's not your responsibility to teach them what to say. You do not have to take that on. It's really more about recognizing that what they're saying isn't helpful. Okay, I'm going to move on and talk to someone else, or not talk to anybody. And remember that they're not trying to hurt you, even though it feels like it. But that's that is my advice, definitely, is the support groups I think are fantastic.
No, thank you for sharing that. I definitely think being able to utilize social media in the positive light, and kind of, they have the new features, the mute and unfollow and all of that.
So and you can be anonymous. Post, which is great.
Yes. I definitely love the anonymous posts feature as well, because sometimes angel mamas aren't ready to truly share. So that also gives them the ability to have the support that they need. Would you be able to go into a little bit detail about your relationship with your healthcare providers during this time? The before, the during, and then the after?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was going through both losses, the first one, in both cases, I was seeing a fertility specialist or a reproductive endocrinologist. In both instances, I was seeing a different specialist. The first one, she was really fantastic leading up to it, during, and after. It's really that simple. She was caring. She was kind. She talked it out with me. I mean, prior to becoming a fertility specialist, she was a kindergarten teacher, so she kind of had that nature in her. It's really, that one's pretty straightforward. She was great. She was understanding. She felt terrible that it didn't work out, all of those things. I want to get back to that in just a second, because there's more to it, but I want to sort of jump for a second to the second experience when I miscarried my baby. That was a very different experience. My second reproductive endocrinologist or fertility specialist was great. She was very knowledgeable. She was very creative in her approach. Everything was very outside the box. Okay, you've already done, 8 fertility treatments at this point, or 10 or 12 or whatever it was. It's not working. Let's try something else. On that front, it was great, because my first specialist was so conservative, always kind of doing the same thing over and over again. But she wasn't as helpful on the bedside manner side, I guess you could say. And so while she kind of prepared me when we saw, oh my gosh, you're pregnant with triplets, and it was unexpected, it was, you know, there was no invasive IVF or IUI. It was, you know, medication that I probably didn't need anyway because I was ovulating. But she very, very quickly said, okay, it's really important for you to know that you might lose one of these babies. That's very common. And it was tough because even though she needs to probably legally tell me that, it was so shocking to hear that because she didn't stop there. She went on to say, you could lose both, 2 of the 3 babies. You might lose all 3. And at any point, that's a kick in the gut to hear that, right? It doesn't matter whether you've been going through infertility or not. Right. When a doctor's telling you, you very well could lose a baby, forget about having multiples, that's hard news to hear. And I think in that way, the relationship was hard because I felt like I didn't want to talk to her because there needed to be, essentially, I feel like there needed to be an easier way to break that news to me, that potential news. Yeah. And then when I lost the baby, the technician who saw it on the screen, I don't remember, it's kind of hard, I blocked that day out a lot. It was such a difficult day. It was the same kind of situation. It was very nonchalant. Well, you know, as I warned you, you did lose one of the babies. And it was kind of like, maybe you could have had like a counselor or somebody in here to prepare me and to share this news with me. Mm-hmm. And that really killed me. And I said, well, I'll get back to that in a minute. Too many thoughts in my head at once. No, that made it hard. Yeah, it made it really hard to know how to navigate this complicated situation where I'm pregnant with 3 babies. I miscarried 1. I still have 2 more growing that I may or may not lose. How does anyone begin to even wrap your mind around that? Right. And I was left to just sort of process on my own. And that was tough. And then, you know, after the loss, it was very soon after that I moved on from my fertility specialist to my regular OB. But that relationship, you know, it was at the end of its journey anyway. So it ended on a fine note. She wasn't horrible or anything. It just, there was a lot of emotion lacking in a very complicated situation. However, my obstetrician was the total opposite. My very first appointment with her was 3 hours long. Oh, wow. Because of the complicated, maybe not. I mean, I don't know. She probably spends that much time with all of her pregnant mamas. I don't know. But that transition to her made it a lot easier because she was able to recognize I had a complicated situation and she supported me. She helped me find the right support. She talked me through everything. She told me every single thing to expect and that there are things that may come up that were unexpected. Mm-hmm. So for me, I lucked out big time because I ended up with a fantastic, incredible obstetrician. Mm-hmm. Now, I wanted to mention the first fertility specialist for a second because you know how I said with the second one that I felt like there needed to be a counselor or somebody, even a social worker, somebody who had training in this area who could help her break that news to me. One of the great things about the first practice I went to was that they had a therapist on staff who specialized in infertility. And while it wasn't like part of the package, which I think it should be for infertility and for miscarriage, it just should be essential that they provide that for you. Right. It was part of the practice. It wasn't like I had to go searching elsewhere. Unfortunately, in my case, I didn't connect with her, so it didn't work for me. Still, but that I think is something that a lot of, you know, women's health is missing, is this emotional mental health component that I think should just be part of it. You know, I think that it should be necessary that if you experience a miscarriage, the practice should be required to provide you with some sort of counseling, because it's an impossible loss to go through on your own, and it's an impossible experience to articulate to people. It's painful in a way that is hard to even understand while you're going through it, and someone who has specific training in that area who could help you, I mean, I get very passionate and excited about that because I think that's just something necessary, because I think a lot of people have that similar experience where their provider tells them, you lost the baby, I'm so sorry. And then you're kind of on your own to figure out how to navigate this complicated thing.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, because that's how my miscarriage was. It was more of, oh, everyone's in the room crying with me, you lost your baby, and then say, okay, just come back every week until your ACG levels are back to 0. So I wasn't provided a social worker, I wasn't provided, you know, any other type of therapist, I wasn't even provided a brochure or anything. So I definitely agree with what you're saying, and it makes my heart smile to know that that specific agency did offer that to moms that are going through that, because like you say, they need it. They really need it, and being able to process everything. And then now I have to go and search on Google for a therapist, and I don't really know what I'm looking for. So it's just, I'm thankful that that agency was able to provide that. And I know you were talking about the infertility, and we're going to switch gears a little bit about the infertility coach. So are you a infertility coach?
I am.
Yes.
I am.
So can you kind of go into a little bit about that, and maybe like how you got started? Obviously, it was probably because of what you went through, but like how that process looked, and then kind of what do you do with the moms?
Yeah. So my focus as an infertility coach is it's not the typical infertility coach. My goal is not to help women get pregnant.
Okay.
I'm not qualified to help people conceive. I don't want to pretend that I am qualified.
Okay.
But my job, I always say, as an infertility coach, I help women or people who identify as women navigate the emotional, physical, and spiritual fallout of infertility, because those are the three main areas. There are others. Those are the three main areas that are affected when you struggle with infertility. And infertility is everything from recurrent miscarriage to not being able to conceive at all, PCOS, endometriosis. I mean, there's like a whole big thing. So as a coach, I always start with the emotional side, because that's the most complicated. How I became a coach is actually really interesting, because prior to being a coach, I always say I was, but I still am a licensed massage therapist, and I'm also a licensed esthetician. Oh, cool. And I'm also a nationally certified continuing education provider for massage therapists. And I have been in that industry for 21 years. It was just 21 years in March, actually.
Hey, congratulations.
And thank you. Big anniversary. I'm very excited. I feel very old, but that's okay. I've specialized the vast majority of my massage and skincare career and my continuing education career in prenatal and postpartum body work and skincare. That was always my specialty. So I had pregnant clients on my table doing, pregnancy massage, advanced stuff. I'd be working on skincare during pregnancy and the postpartum period, because hormones are crazy and they do bonkers things to our skin. And then I went through infertility, and I thought, I got to help more people. So I became certified in fertility massage, and I educated myself and learned more and more about these three areas of reproductive, I always call it nonsense. I have more profane terms that I use sometimes, but I like to keep it PG. Right. I always call it reproductive nonsense. Infertility, pregnancy, postpartum, these are crazy times in life. And our bodies, from up here down to our toes, inside and out, kind of go crazy on us. And then I got pregnant, and I had my babies. And I had this idea in my mind that when my kids were 6 months old, I was going to go back to my massage practice. But then the pandemic started. And obviously, in the early days of the pandemic, I couldn't touch anybody. I couldn't do facials, couldn't do massages. What was I going to do? And I spent a lot of time in those early days really focusing on my children. They were very young. They were, I think, 8 months old when the pandemic started. And the more time I spent with them, the more time I realized, gosh, women need support. women need support during these hormonal crazy experiences, which includes infertility,
Right.
pregnancy, and the postpartum period. And I started thinking, I wonder if I could be a coach. I had seen a coach when I went through infertility. It wasn't helpful for me because it wasn't the right fit. And I thought, well, maybe I could go a different approach. I know a lot about reproductive stuff, and I know on a personal and a professional level. So I decided to get certified as a coach. So I became an integrative wellness life coach. And essentially, that's where I started. I started just by thinking, I want to help people with all of the emotional stress. But guess what? I have all this physical training too. So I can help them with the physical stuff.
Yeah.
I can teach people how to, massage themselves, or teach them how to teach their partner to massage them. And then there's this whole spiritual side. And that, I always say, that's religion or not religion if you're not a religious person. There's a lot of questioning of faith and beliefs that comes along with infertility. And so it's kind of evolved into this point where I bring all of my training with massage and body work and skincare, and all of my training as a coach, and all of my personal experiences with infertility, pregnancy, and postpartum. And that's kind of where I'm at, is I just help people navigate it, because it's hard to navigate. It's hard to know what to do to help yourself. It's hard to know where to go, who to talk to, what to focus on, what not to focus on.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's become not just helping women while they're going through infertility, but if they're pregnant after having gone through infertility, if they're postpartum after having gone through infertility. And the complicating factor is if they've experienced a loss or multiple losses. Miscarriage is so still, even no matter how much we keep talking about it, it's still, there's so much stigma. There's so much stigma that we put on ourselves. And so, I mean, that's sort of how I ended up where I am as an infertility coach. I'm not a fertility coach. I'm an infertility coach. I focus on the emotional, and then the physical, and then the spiritual, because for me, it goes in that order.
Yes.
And it's been the greatest few years of my life being able to help other people who are struggling, because these experiences are so hard and it's so difficult to find the right support. So
yeah, no, thank you for sharing that journey. I like the specifics. I like that you were able to kind of explain your reasoning for the outline and the format that you utilize with the women. And I know that you are helping many, many women. So with that, would you be able to share with the women that are following us and watching us, and those that will follow and replay the video later, how they can get in contact with you if this is something that they want to receive support and assistance with?
Absolutely. So my website is a really good place to start. It's really simple. It's www.thehormonalmama.com, because that's me, the hormonal mama. Hey, I always call myself that. And that's how to find me on social media. Here on Instagram, I'm at the hormonal mama. On Facebook, I'm the hormonal mama, but the better way to reach me is Cara Drescher, although I think I'm under Cara B Drescher. That's kind of how I go professionally.
Okay.
And then the best way to contact me is either reach out through DMs or PMs or on whatever platform, but especially email. Email's easy. It's Cara, C like Charlie, ARA, at thehormonalmama.com. And yeah, I always want to help. My big thing is I'm not a right fit for everybody, and I know that. I'm quirky. My personality might be too loud for someone, but it's important to me to help people find the right support. If I'm not the right fit personality wise, I know a lot of people, and I connect people to the right people. Or if my specialty isn't quite right, but you don't know what you need help with, I can help you narrow that down and point you to the right direction. That's my goal, is even if just helping people to me is helping get people to the right place, even if that's not me. Because we all
No.
Deserve help, and nobody can help everybody.
Right. Yes.
That's not really.
Oh, I love that. I love that. No one can help everybody.
True.
I really love that. Another favorite part of the interviews that I do with the Angel Mamas is the end, where I kind of ask you those 3 questions. So, what is something that you would like for the Angel Mamas to know? What would you like for those who may not have experience or we experience, but they know someone? And then what would you like society and social media and the world to know about this journey that we're on?
Those are such great questions. They just are, because they're so important. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the first one, I want all Angel Mamas to know a few things. One, you are amazing. You've gone through a very real, very valid trauma. Regardless of what happened, how it happened, your feelings are valid. What you went through is not fair. And it's really, I know it can feel like a big kick in the gut when people say, oh, you're so strong, I couldn't possibly survive that. And if you're me, I want to be like, yeah, now's the time for me to walk away, because that's not helpful. People mean to be helpful, but it's not. And it's okay to feel frustrated when people say that. I want Angel Mamas to know your baby loves you. Even now, even forever and ever, that baby loves you because you were their home, and you will always be with them as they will always be with you. And nothing that anybody ever says will change that. That's important to know. I think for people who haven't gone through a loss, but maybe know someone who has, or maybe if they don't know, but someday they find out that someone has, I think it's really important to know that while there is no right thing to say, there are a lot of wrong things to say. I think it's important to know that the very best thing you can tell a loss mama, an angel mama, is, I'm so sorry for your loss. I love you. I support you. I'm here for you. Things like that. You don't have to say the perfect thing, because nothing you say is going to be perfect. It's a pain. It's a horrible pain that nobody should have to go through. And it's hard enough for us to understand our emotions. So it's really important to just know the best things to say are just that you love them, you support them, and you are so sorry for their loss. It does not help, like I said, to say things like, wow, you're so strong, I could never be that strong. We don't want to have to be strong. That's not something we want to have to do. We don't have a choice. We have to get through it. And it might seem helpful to say that, but that's one of the things I highly recommend actually not saying, and maybe just saying, I love you. It's that simple. And in terms of society, I want society to know a lot of things. One of them is miscarriage is very common. I want society to know that there is nothing shameful or embarrassing about miscarriage. I want society to know that there's no necessary stigma about miscarriage. It happens, and that doesn't make it nothing, but it doesn't make it weird or something to shun people for. And I just want society to know that us angel mamas deserve the love. We've gone through a horrible trauma that we didn't deserve to go through, and we love our babies forever and ever and ever, and they will always be with us and always be a part of us, no matter what. And so for me, angel mamas deserve Mother's Day every year. Angel mamas deserve and are always and forever a mother, no matter whatever happens down the road. That's probably the first thing I should have said when I was talking about what I want angel mamas to know. You are always a mom forever and ever. You will always be a mother. So I so much more I could say, obviously, because I just never
society.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I'm sad that these experiences had to bring us together, but I'm very thankful that you're able to come on today and just shed the light and love that our organization tries to give to the women that follow us and that we support during this journey. So I'll make sure that I tag you and put your information in the caption. And thank you so much for coming on today, and together we will heal.
Yes, Danielle, thank you so incredibly much for having me. And thank you for all of the incredible work that you do. What you do is so important. We need you. We need your organization. Tiny Hearts Remembered is just so special and so amazing. So thank you for everything you do. And thank you for, giving me the honor of being here with you today. It is just absolutely, I'm honored to have been here. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All righty. Well, everybody, thank you so much. Remember to make sure that you support Cara with everything that she's doing. I'll be sure to tag her in the Instagram video. Sorry, I'm getting brain freeze right now.
Okay. I get it. I've been like that since I woke up this morning. It's all good.
Yes. So I'll be sure to do that. And together we will heal. Bye.
Yes, we will. Bye-bye.
See ya.